There's a moment, usually quiet, usually private, when you ask yourself, is this all there is? Not out loud, not in front of anyone, just a whisper inside your own head when no one else is watching. And it hits harder than any failure, any insult, any heartbreak, because deep down, you know the answer. No, this isn't all there is. There's something more. There's something you were supposed to do, something that used to light you up before the world convinced you to dim it down. But now you've traded that fire for comfort, for realistic goals, for survival. And here's the truth no one tells you. The pain of chasing your dream is real, but the pain of not chasing it, that one never ends. It stays, it grows. It shows up in anxiety, in boredom, in a life that looks fine on the outside, but feels empty underneath. And maybe you've started telling yourself a story. I'm too late. I'm not special. I missed my chance. But that story, it's not yours. It's a script you were handed by a world terrified of people who actually believe in themselves. This video isn't just motivation, it's a mirror. And if you watch till the end, you won't just remember why you had a dream in the first place. You'll remember that you still have time to build it. Let's begin. Most people don't hate their lives. That's the trap. They don't hate it, but they don't love it either. It's not painful enough to spark change, but not joyful enough to feel alive. It's just neutral. Just enough comfort to stay. Just enough fear to never leave. They wake up, go to work, come home, and scroll through dreams they gave up on years ago. They laugh at memes about hating Mondays, but deep down, they're not laughing. They're surviving. They're performing. And when they lie in bed at night, when the noise dies down and the show is over, that same quiet voice returns. Is this it? And still they don't answer, because answering means confronting a truth they've buried for years. They stopped chasing what mattered. They stopped believing they were meant for more. No one talks about the regret that builds in people who never even tried. You won't see it in Instagram posts or TikToks. It won't be trending, but it's there, behind their eyes, in the way they sigh at nothing, in the way they light up when someone else talks about a dream, as if remembering they had one too. And here's the cruelest part. They didn't choose an average life. They just stopped choosing at all. They let life decide for them. They waited for permission, for signs, for guarantees. But dreams don't come with guarantees. They come with whispers. They come with restlessness. They come with fire that the world will try to put out before it ever catches light. And if you don't listen, if you ignore it long enough, that dream doesn't just go away. It turns into resentment. Resentment at yourself, at the world, at time. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be the one who looks back and says, I could have, I should have, I was too scared. Because the average life isn't the default. It's just the result of forgetting that you had a choice. You didn't choose your dream, it chose you. You didn't randomly wake up one day with a desire to write, to build, to perform, to heal, to lead. That pull, that spark, that thing that made your heart race when you thought about it, it wasn't a coincidence. It was a calling. But we've been trained to ignore the call, to see dreams as distractions, to treat them like childhood fantasies that don't belong in the real world. So we bury them under jobs we hate, relationships we've outgrown, and routines that numb us just enough to forget we were once on fire. But the truth is this: dreams aren't entertainment. They're communication. They are your soul's language, a message from the deepest part of you saying, this is what you're meant for. And it doesn't matter how many people don't get it. It doesn't matter if your parents roll their eyes. If your friends laugh, if your boss tells you to be realistic, they weren't given your dream. It wasn't whispered to them. It was handed to you because you're the only one who can carry it, the only one with your exact voice, your exact scars, your exact experience. And every time you ignore that dream, you're not just betraying your future, you're rejecting your design. See, your dream is the map, and your discomfort, that's the compass. That ache you feel when you're not pursuing it, that restlessness, that sadness you can't quite explain, that's not depression, that's misalignment. That's what it feels like to be off track from what you're supposed to be building. Most people confuse peace with comfort, but real peace doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from walking directly into your purpose, even when your legs shake, even when the path is dark, even when the people around you don't see the vision. Because that vision, that dream, it's not random. It's a message from your future self, telling you exactly where to go. You weren't born afraid. You were taught to be, taught to color inside the lines, taught to wait your turn, taught to trade your spark for approval. It starts early. When you say something wild as a kid, something bold like, "I want to be an astronaut," or "I'm going to change the world," and the adults around you chuckle, "That's cute, but what's your real plan?" That moment plants a seed, not of ambition, but of doubt, and doubt is contagious. Soon you learn it's safer to stay quiet about your dreams. You learn to shrink, to fit, to blend. By the time you're a teenager, the world has already handed you a script. Go to school, get the job, climb the ladder, buy the house, pray for weekends, and never ever ask if any of it makes you feel alive. Society rewards comfort, it worships predictability, it funds systems that keep you numb, entertainment, gossip, dopamine loops. Because the second you wake up and chase what actually matters, you become powerful, you become dangerous. A dreamer who believes in their vision is a threat. Not because they'll burn the world down, but because they'll build something the world can't control. So instead, you're offered alternatives: prestige, status, security, metrics you can measure on a resume but not in a mirror. And little by little, you start thinking maybe the dream was childish. Maybe this is just what adulthood feels like. Tired, stressed, stuck. But here's the secret no one told you. They didn't kill your dream. They just distracted you long enough for you to abandon it yourself. And once you've been trained to settle, you start calling it maturity. You start labeling people who still chase their dream as lucky or reckless. But deep down, you envy them. Not because they've made it, but because they tried. Because somewhere inside you, the part of you that still believes, that part is watching and waiting and wondering when you'll finally break the spell and come home to yourself. There's a cost to chasing your dream, but there's a far greater cost to not chasing it. And it doesn't come all at once. It arrives slowly, like fog creeping into a quiet town. You don't notice it at first. You're still busy, still smiling, still fine. But then, things start to feel heavier. You wake up tired no matter how long you slept. You start resenting people who are going after what they want. Not because they're wrong, but because they remind you of the version of yourself you left behind. And then the worst part happens. You begin to rationalize your own silence. You say things like, "Well, maybe I didn't really want it anyway," or "It probably wouldn't have worked out." You tell yourself these lies not to comfort yourself, but to survive the regret. Because real regret doesn't show up in a single bad moment. It shows up in repetition. It's in the 6th job you don't care about, the 5th relationship where you're pretending, the 2nd mortgage you thought would make you happy but didn't. You look at your life and realize you built everything except what you actually wanted, and now it's harder to change, not because you're incapable, but because now you've got something to lose. You've built a cage made of comfort, and the world calls it success. But inside, you're still starving, not for money, not for fame, for meaning. The brutal truth is this: comfort can kill you, not your body, but your purpose, your fire, your soul. You were never supposed to be numb. You were never supposed to be fine. You were meant to feel, to risk, to try, because failure only stings for a while. But regret echoes for a lifetime. And the longer you wait, the louder it gets. One day, you'll look in the mirror and not recognize who you became. Not because you changed, but because you never allowed yourself to. And when that day comes, the question won't be, did I succeed? It'll be, did I even try? You're not random. You're not generic. You're not just one of 8 billion. You are a blueprint, unique, intentional, precise. The way you think, the way you feel, the way certain things move you while others don't. That's not a glitch. That's design. And deep inside that design is a purpose. Not just a job, not just a hobby, but a specific reason you're here. Something only you can create in the way you can create it. But the world doesn't teach you how to find it. The world teaches you how to be useful to someone else's system, how to be profitable, marketable, replaceable. They teach you how to follow, not how to listen. Because if you actually listen to your own intuition, you'd leave the system, you'd build your own, you'd stop playing small. The things you're passionate about, the things that make your heart beat faster, the ones you daydream about while pretending to pay attention in meetings, that's not distraction, that's direction. And yet, you've been told that dreams are too risky, that you need a backup plan, that the world doesn't care about your passion. But what if that's a lie? What if the thing you've been suppressing is the exact thing you're here to offer? Imagine if Einstein had ignored his curiosity. If Van Gogh had listened when people said he'd never make it. If every great innovator, artist, healer, and leader had just said, maybe I'll play it safe. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. And every day you don't lean into that truth, you hand your life over to someone else's idea of success. But when you start chasing what calls you, even if you're not ready, even if it's messy, you begin to align with who you were always meant to become. The resistance you feel, that's not a sign to stop. That's a sign that you're getting close. Because the life that's meant for you will never show up as easy, but it will always show up as necessary. You weren't built to settle. You were built to set something in motion, and the world is waiting for it, whether it knows it or not. There's a version of you that never gave up, a version who followed the pull instead of the pressure, who bet on belief instead of fear, who woke up not to survive but to build. And that version, they're still possible. They're not gone. They're waiting. But time doesn't wait. It never has. And every day you hesitate, the dream dims just a little more. Not because it's dead, but because you're giving your energy to everything except what matters. You already know what you need to do. You've always known. The hesitation isn't from confusion. It's from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of starting too late. But here's what no one tells you. Starting late is still better than never starting, because you can recover from failure. You can learn. You can adapt. But regret is a cage with no key. It's a weight you carry alone, forever wondering what could have been. And maybe no one in your life has ever told you this before, so hear it now, clearly, finally, and without apology. Your dream is worth chasing, not because it guarantees success, but because it guarantees truth. And truth is what sets your soul on fire. You don't need to know every step. You don't need to have the plan figured out. You just need to move. Now, even if it's small, even if it's quiet, even if you're scared, because one day the door closes and all that's left are the echoes of what if. But today the door's still open. Walk through it.